Hello everyone, this is James Shore with another test-driven JavaScript video. I'm recording this on December 16th, 2012, picking up right where we left off in the last episode. And when we finished off the last episode, we were just working on making our tests easier to read and write so we could handle multiple line segments, testing multiple line segments. So to refresh your memory, in this chapter, we're working on the ability to click, and draw line segments for our WeWikiPaint application. And that code works, however, our tests fail, which means that there's some problem with the way with our new assertion code. Now, what we're working on here is we wanted to make the assertions easier to write and read. That's what we're working on right now. After that, I want to test one click, should have no paths, test one path, and then test multiple paths. That's kind of what we're working now. That code all works, but partly because we jumped the gun a bit. We didn't actually test our way through that. We just sort of wrote what needed to be written. And that's partly because we spiked it earlier, had all this code to solve it before, so we just sort of repeated that rather than really truly test driving it. And that can happen sometimes when you do a spike. And that's okay. We'll just make sure we do it properly as we get back into it. But the main issue facing us right now is that we're clicking the mouse at 2030, then at 5060, and then at 4020. And we're saying that our first line segment should be 2030 to 5060. So you can see that here. And then our second line segment should be 5060 to 4020. And that's all right. The problem is that's not what we're getting out. And there must be a problem in our test code because the production code appears to be working just fine. So I'm not sure what the issue is, but let's see if we can find it. So click mouse, I'm pretty sure that's working. Drawing elements is pulling out what it needs to pull out. What's weird is paper paths, it's swapping the 4020 and the 5060. Now, it could possibly be because of variable hoisting. Basically, declaring a var inside of a loop doesn't erase that var when you go around again like it does in other languages. But that doesn't seem like it's likely to be the issue. The other thing that could be going on here is I have no idea. I was going to say the push could be wrong, but that doesn't seem right. Let's go ahead and dump box let's dump box as we go through the loop and just see what happens. So we're dumping 20, 30, 50, 60, 40, 20, 50, 60. Huh. You know what? I know what's going on here. Yeah. The problem here, I believe, is that a while ago we stopped parsing the internals of the SVG and VML paths that Raphael created and went to the simpler approach of just asking for the bounding box. However, what we've done here is we've gone backwards. We've gone from 2030 to 5060 to 4020. Bam. And internally within Raphael, it's flipping that around. So it's saying that the result is actually backwards. And of course, that isn't working with our expectation. We're expecting that it be in this order. But in fact, it doesn't really matter which order it's in. Either way is correct. That's kind of a tricky one because the line segments aren't vectors. So it doesn't matter. We could say 40, 20, 50, 60, and it would work just the same. The result would be exactly the same. So technically, the result we're getting from our tests is good enough. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's one way or the other, but it's causing our assertion to fail. And that's a bit tricky. What we really need is for these pairs to be unordered. But there's no data structure in this version of JavaScript that gives us that ability. That data structure is called a bag or a set, when you can have unordered collections inside of a container. That's a bag or a set. JavaScript doesn't have that, although I do believe they're adding it in a future version. So how are we going to deal with this? One option would be to not use get bounding box and go back to our original code that looks at the actual internals of the DOM and pulls out the paths. That, however, does make the assumption that they are not flipped there, and they well could be. Let's go ahead and try that. The other option would be to, rather than saying paper paths, we could write a little assert function. We could write assert paper paths and then pass in, our array. And then we would just do expect on each path, basically, and do our own. We don't care which order it's in. That might be better. The problem is it doesn't play well with expect.js, because when that doesn't work, the error messages will not be very nice. So, if we were not using expect.js, if we were using an XUnit style framework, that would be my first choice, because it's really easy to put nice error messages in an XUnit style test framework. And maybe I'm wrong about the error messages in expect.js. If any of you know of a way of doing good error messages in expect.js, let me know, but I haven't found it. All right, well, let's go ahead and try going back to the Raphael approach. So what we need to do is say path 4 rather than get bounding box. And in order to do that, I'm actually going to simplify some of our other code first. So here, this is failing. I'm going to go ahead and get this back to where it was before, just to get our test to pass. So what we've done here is we've factored out paper paths and got test to pass. Doesn't work in all cases. Yeah. Okay, so now let's get rid of this path 4 here by having this use paper paths. And I think that will work. Yeah, it did. Okay. And now that we're not using paper path 4 anywhere, now I can have this return something a little less. Rather than returning m, comma, l, comma, blah, 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 I'm going to have this return the same style format that I was going to say I'm going to have it return the same style format that getBbox does, but that's a bit trickier. Let's go ahead and start here and just sort of work our way up to it. So we've got x, start x, y, start y, x2, end x, y2, end y. And let's just see what happens with that. So that should work just fine unless I've made a linting error. Okay. Now, here, rather than using getBbox, I want to use path4 element I. And that's a bit ugly, that code right there, but I don't want to fix it right now. I really want to focus on just this issue. Okay, so that should fail. I was expecting it to work on IE8, but it didn't. It's complaining about undefined not being a function at line 46. No method path4. Ah. Right. Let's try that again. Okay, so it works on IE8. Now let's see if it's still flipped around, because internally, Raphael might be flipping these things around. Yeah. Yeah. It's still failing on IE8. Let's find that IE8 error. Expected. Oh, well, that's just because I'm not clicking the mouse. Let's try that again. IE8 works. Okay, so what's happening here? If that's, I mean, I've sort of been digging into the internals here, but what's happening here is that previously, in order to figure out what paper paths, what lines were being drawn, we called a Raphael function called getBoundingBox, getBbox. And internally in Raphael, it's normalizing the results of that so that the left comes before the right. Regardless of how we drew the line, the left is coming before the right. But of course, when we're testing it, we're assuming that the line's drawn in a particular order. Now, it doesn't actually matter which order the line is drawn in for the results, but for our assertion, we need this to be, the order we say it is. So the question is, and if we look at the internals, if we actually dive in to the DOM, we can see that it's being done in the right order. It is actually being put into the DOM in the same order that we tell it to. So it does work if we look at the DOM. Now the question is, which is uglier? Diving into the DOM, which I don't really like to do, or writing code to work around the fact that BoundingBox is normalizing our line segments. That's a tough one. I guess what we could do is just write a note here saying, note, paths are normalized with left side first in all cases. And then we just modify our assertion here to say 20, 40, 60, 50, 60. The problem with that is it's going to be a lot harder to read. I mean, there's something nice about saying we want the paths to be from here to here to here to here. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode. So I'm going to leave that as a puzzle for all of you to think about. This episode's going up right around Christmas time, so have a great holiday. I'm going to take Christmas off, so our next episode will be next week. So I'm going to go ahead and put these up. You'll have a chance to think about it, comment on it. Next time, we'll actually write the code that you guys tell me to do in the comments. Do we stick with the approach of writing the assertion in the order it should be and writing a lot of ugly code to dive in to our SVG and VML DOM? Or do we work around it simply by just changing the order of our expectation? Or do we write a more complex assertion that that normalizes these values for us and then does the assertion at the cost of having much less clear assertion messages? And go ahead and try those out. Go into this code, try out all those options yourself, and let me know what you think. So I'm looking forward to hearing your comments. Have a great holiday, and I will see you next time.